When a major bank CEO talks about AI, you kind of expect the usual corporate buzzwords, right? But Wells Fargo's CEO, Charlie Scharf, he went in a totally different direction. He delivered the blunt, honest truth about what AI means for banking jobs. And what he said? Well, it might just change how every leader thinks about technology. So, let's get into it.
Wow. Okay, so right out of the gate, no sugarcoating it. He's basically saying that if you're a leader and you're telling people AI won't lead to fewer jobs, you either have no idea what you're talking about or you're just not being straight with people. That is a remarkably direct statement, and it completely reframes this whole conversation.
So you might be thinking, okay, big talk, but is there any action behind it? Well, the numbers tell the story. Under Sharp's leadership, Wells Fargo's headcount has already gone down by nearly 24%. So for him, this isn't some hypothetical guess about the future. It's just the next step in a strategy that's already been happening. That's why his words carry so much weight. They're backed up by years of action.
Okay, but why be so blunt? Why not, soften the message a little bit? Well, Scharf believes that being this direct is actually the most responsible and strategic way to handle this. Let's break down his reasoning.
And here is the absolute core of his argument. He thinks it's just fundamentally unfair to hire someone for a role that you secretly know has a limited shelf life. So by looking ahead and being honest about which jobs are going to be automated, he's trying to avoid that painful cycle of hiring and firing.
So his whole approach can really be boiled down to these 3 steps. First, just acknowledge reality. See where the industry is headed. Second, stop hiring people for jobs that are on their way out. And third, and this is the really crucial part, focus your energy on retraining the people you already have for the jobs that are coming next.
He's also really clear that this isn't going to happen overnight. We're not talking about some sudden, massive layoff. Scharf emphasizes that this change will be gradual, that it'll unfold over a long period of time. And that slow pace, well, that's the key, isn't it? It's what makes a real, thoughtful transition possible. It gives people the space to retrain and adapt, instead of just creating chaos.
So what does this actually look like on the ground for employees? Scharf gave some really specific examples of how AI is already changing the day-to-day work inside Wells Fargo, from the really technical roles to the more client-facing ones.
First up, let's talk about the people who are literally building the technology, the developers. This is one area where the impact has been immediate and, well, you can actually measure it.
And the jump in productivity is just staggering. Scharf says his developers are already 30 to 40% more efficient at writing code just by using AI tools. Now, for now, he says this hasn't meant fewer jobs, it just means they're getting a whole lot more done. AI is basically acting like a powerful force multiplier here.
Next, let's look at a core banking job, commercial lending. Here, the change is less about raw speed and more about refocusing where people put their brainpower.
So before, bankers spent a huge amount of time putting together these long, detailed credit memos. Now, with AI, Scharf says most of that process should just be automated. The whole point is to free up the banker's mind to focus on what actually matters, analyzing the risk and making a smart decision. It's a shift from doing paperwork to doing brain work.
And we're seeing a really similar story play out in the high-stakes world of investment banking, especially for the folks who are just starting their careers.
You know the old path for a junior analyst, right? It was famous for endless nights just grinding out pitch decks and deal documents. The new path, powered by AI, lets them skip a lot of that manual labor. They can learn way faster by focusing directly on the data and the strategy behind a deal, instead of just worrying about the formatting on a slide.
But this change raises a really fascinating question. If you don't do the grunt work, how do you actually learn the business from the ground up? To answer that, Scharf gets personal. He basically uses himself as the prime example of how to adapt. He says, look, the idea that you can only learn by physically writing stuff down, maybe that's true for some people, but it's not a universal law. He's totally transformed his own work style to be completely paperless. And he admits this was not easy. He used to be the person who printed out everything because, in his words, he couldn't do anything on his screen. But he made a conscious choice to change, and his point is so powerful. You can learn to work differently, and you can learn to learn differently. It's a skill. And this is really his call to action for every leader out there. This kind of evolution isn't just going to happen on its own. Organizations have to actively drive this change in how they train and develop people. If you keep teaching the same old skills in the same old ways, you're going to leave people completely unprepared for this new reality.
So what does all this mean? What skills and what mindset do you actually need to thrive in this new era of banking? I mean, what does the future banker even look like?
Well, it all points to a new kind of banker, whose value is defined by their thinking, not by the tasks they do. So the key attributes are things like adaptability, strategic focus, and a real commitment to always be learning. The most valuable skill is no longer creating the report, but being able to critically analyze the report the AI gives you and asking all the right questions about it.
And that leaves us with one final critical question that goes way beyond just banking. As AI takes over more and more of the doing, the fundamental challenge for every leader in every industry is this: how do we stop teaching people processes and start teaching them how to truly think?